Hello, everyone, and welcome back to History of Medicine. This week, we're going to turn our attention to China and talk a little bit about the development of Chinese medicine during the days of the Han Dynasty. The Han Dynasty lasted from about 206 BCE to 221 CE. It is often regarded as a golden age in Chinese history. It was an era of great technological advance, of economic prosperity, and of territorial growth. It was an era of political centralization and of commercial expansion. It was the era in which Confucianism became the official state-supported philosophy of the realm, and in which the characters that form the basis of China's written language first came into existence. And for our purposes, it was also an era of intense medical activity. The Han Dynasty gave us China's first scholar physicians, a group of academic doctors whose writings developed a generally naturalistic style of medicine that linked the human body and human health to philosophical concepts like yin and yang, qi, and the five phases. These texts and the theories they contained would serve as the basis for medical learning and research for centuries to come, and as such, it's important to spend some time examining them. Among other things, they'll help us understand how ancient Chinese medicine was bound up in much broader matters, including the Han state's political goals and its ideologies of governance. Among the many medical texts authored during the Han Dynasty, undoubtedly the most important was one called the Inner Canon of the Yellow Emperor. Set in the days before the rise of the Han Dynasty, the text consists of a dialogue between a sagely doctor and a fictional Chinese ruler called the Yellow Emperor. Throughout their dialogue, the Yellow Emperor peppers his physician instructor with questions, and gradually he comes to appreciate the complexity of medicine and to regard this as a subject fit for imperial patronage. The basic argument of the Inner Canon is that if one wishes to understand the causes of illness, one must first understand the patterns of the cosmos, because, as the text has it, human physiological processes are constantly being affected by things like the changing of the seasons and astral cycles. The goal of medicine, according to the Inner Canon, is to discover the natural order of the universe and adjust one's behavior to it. Disease is thus the result of one's failure to live in accordance with the natural rhythms of the cosmos. It is for this reason that Chinese medicine during the Han Dynasty is sometimes referred to as cosmological medicine. And in addition to arguing for the importance of aligning the human body with the heavens, the Inner Canon also argues that the body needs to be aligned with the earthly realm, namely the political and social order. Consider this passage from the text, which you can read on the screen. As you likely noticed, this excerpt from the Inner Canon talks about the human body a lot. As such, in our attempts to understand cosmological medicine, we're going to look at a field of humanities and social sciences research known as body studies. In particular, in this lecture, we're going to look at the history of the body, a relatively new subject within academia. And our questions for today are as follows. 1. What is the body? How do researchers in the field known as body studies answer this question? And 2. How have scholars tried to historicize the human body, and what impact has this had on understandings of the subject? Okay, so to start, I want to ask a basic question. What is the body, really? It sounds like an easy question. At first glance, we would probably say that the body is a collection of cells, which are combined into organs and that operate in systems like the nervous system or the reproductive system inside of a single organism, like a human being. For humans, the body typically has a universal form: 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso, and a head. We'd say that's what a body is. If we wanted to go further, we might say that bodies are defined by things like bones and muscles and hormones and genes, which give us a particular color skin, a particular kind of hair, and a particular set of eyes, nose, mouth, etc. But is that it? Is that all there is? If we think about things a little bit more, we realize that our physical and social environments can also affect our bodies. Things like malnutrition can affect our height and our weight, just as certain diseases can leave a lasting mark on our skin, our organs, and even our bones. In addition to this, our bodies are shaped by decisions that we make. For example, when we decorate ourselves with paint, makeup, or tattoos, we're modifying our bodies. When we exercise, change our diets, or wear certain kinds of clothing to alter our appearance, we're modifying our bodies. On a deeper level, when we're diagnosed with certain medical conditions, we can use technologies like organ transplantation or in vitro fertilization to change the physical stuff inside us. If we decide that our assigned gender at birth is wrong for us, we can take hormones and undergo surgical procedures that change our internal anatomy and our chemical makeup. Sometimes, these decisions are influenced by broader social factors, like, for example, beauty standards, or ideas about what makes a person attractive. The bodily features that we associate with sexiness or desirability, along with lots of other things, come from the time and place in which we live. In this sense, we could say that bodies are contingent. That is, they are molded by factors outside the body, which are then internalized into our physical bodies. When we say things like, "that guy is hot," or "that woman is ugly," we're relying on standards of attractiveness that have little to do with biology. There's nothing natural about the idea that straight hair is more attractive than curly hair, for example. But nevertheless, certain cultures have these ideas, and as this indicates, bodies are shaped by culture and society. Bodies change on account of new expectations and changing perceptions of what the ideal body should look like. And none of this comes from nature. Now, to be clear, this does not mean that bodies aren't biological organisms. They certainly are. However, it does mean that this biological organism can't be understood without first trying to understand the social, cultural, and historical context in which it lives. Insights such as these have had a profound impact on historians. Until quite recently, historians have not really talked about bodies at all. There are lots of reasons for this, but one of the main ones is that for a long time, they, like most people, believed that the human body was something outside of history, that is, something that is a natural object with universal needs and wants that is unaffected by culture and society. All bodies need to eat, all bodies produce waste, all bodies sleep, etc. These just seem to be timeless truths, not things in need of historicizing. But then, in the 1980s, influenced by emerging scholarship in body studies, historians started to rethink this assumption, and eventually they came to reject the idea that bodies were biological givens without histories. No longer taking the body for granted, they instead started to problematize it, and the resulting somatic turn in the scholarship led to an intense fascination with all manner of corporeal matters. As a result of their work, today we have historical studies of the medical body, the sexual body, the social body, the discursive body, the disabled body, the civilized body, the engineered body, the digital body, and the body politic, to name but a few. There are books and articles that discuss the body at work, the body at war, the body at risk, and the body in question. Like their colleagues in body studies, historians agree about the need to look at the body as it has been experienced and expressed within particular cultural systems. But historians are fundamentally concerned with how these experiences have changed over time. How did people experience their bodies and their bodily functions? How did they try to control them? How did they project them to others? What did they mean when talking about their blood, their heads, their hearts, their bowels, their spirits, their humors, etc.? How did people think of their bodies, their aches and pains when they fell sick? How have particular organs and body parts embodied people's emotions and desires? On a broader level, we could ask about how social groups have tried to regulate and reform the body. How have governments tried to police the bodies of others? How did political authorities treat the individual body and link it to ideas about the body politic? How have states tried to possess the body and use it for their own ends? So, to recap, bodily processes are not just natural, spontaneous, biological givens. The body is simultaneously a physical and a symbolic artifact, something both naturally and culturally produced. There is no common reality connecting all our bodily experiences because the meanings that we give to these experiences vary by culture. In what follows, I'd like to talk about one particular way historians have helped illustrate these points. And I'd like to do so by talking about something we might call the sexed body. In modern times, we tend to divide bodies on the basis of genitalia, in terms of the female body and the male body. But are these natural, self-evident categories? Why do we differentiate between bodies on the basis of their reproductive organs? Are these organs even that different? Interestingly, if we go back in time, we find a quite different way of understanding bodies. In ancient Greece, for example, there was no such thing as the female body. Instead of this, there was just one body with two variants. If it was cold, it was female. If it was warm, it was male. Ancient Greece certainly had the idea of two genders, but there was only one sex. Boundaries between male and female were of degree, not of kind. Female genitalia were simply male genitalia that happened to exist on the inside of the body, instead of the outside. This one-sex body prevailed throughout Western medical cultures until the 18th century, when it was replaced by the two-sex model we still use today, and which says that males and females have different kinds of bodies. Today, we extend the reproductive differences between males and females to all parts of the body, including the mind, which is why some people speak of things like the female brain and the male brain. But this is a relatively new development, and its emergence is not really linked to the appearance of more and better science. Instead, the advent of the two-sex model reflected changes in politics, institutional life, and civic society, all of which in the 18th century created the conditions for a radical reframing of sex. But up until this time, sex was fragile and malleable. Under certain circumstances, it could change spontaneously. Women were just cold men, not entirely different creatures. But again, in the 18th century, all of this was rejected, and instead, the new view was that males and females were so different that they're almost separate species. Okay, we're going to have to leave it there for now. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion of body studies and the history of the body. Later in the week, we're going to see how this helps us understand China's system of cosmological medicine, but for now, I have some broader questions for us to think about, which are on the screen right here. See you on the discussion board.